Hello everyone. In today's video, we are going to talk about top 50 most asked SQL interview questions and answers. Myself Mohammed Zubair, and this channel is all about showing you how to become a highly paid IT pro really fast. So without any further ado, let's get started. Number 1. What do you mean by DBMS and RDBMS? Well, DBMS stands for Database Management System. It is a program that basically is a management system that creates, controls, uses, and maintains the database. It can also be termed as a file manager that stores the data in the database rather than saving the data in the traditional file system. On the other hand, RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. RDBMS stores the data just like DBMS, but the tables are related by the common fields between the columns of the table. It also offers the functionality of relational operators to manipulate the data stored in the table. SQL Server is an example of RDBMS. Number 2. What do you mean by SQL? Well, SQL is a short form of structured query language. This language gets used for communication with the database, and it is a standard language that we use for tasks such as updating, insertion, retrieval, and deletion of database. Number 3. Name some of the usages of SQL. Well, we can perform some of the following operations with SQL. Creating the database, insertion or adding new data, deleting existing data from database, retrieving the data from our tables, updating the data into our database or tables, creating functions and views, dropping and creating different tables, and then we have converting the data types that are there into our tables and into our databases. Number 4. What do you mean by database? And explain tables and fields. Well, the database is nothing. It is just a dataset organized in a model with rows and columns. That data can be accessed, sorted, retrieved, and managed efficiently. We also know this by a term called a structured form of data, and data that can be accessed in many ways. Now let's talk about tables and fields. A table consists of a set of data organized in a model with some rows and columns, and you can categorize the rows as horizontal and column as vertical. A table can have any number of rows called a record, but a table can have a specific number of columns that is called as field. For example, here I have a table and the name of that table is workers. Then in terms of fields that are there into my table, these are employee ID or EMP ID, then we have employee name, and at the end we have date of birth. With respect to each field, we have some data, like in terms of employee ID, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as ID, then we have Peter as employee name, and then at the end we have the date as 1/1/2022. Number 5. What do you mean by relationships and entities? A relationship among the entities can be referred to as a connection between tables or entities. For example, in a company database, the employee and department entities are linked and associated with each other. Entities can be defined as a person, thing, place, or any identifiable object for which we can store the data in the database. For example, in the college database, student, teacher, exam, etc. They can be referred to as entities. Number 6. What do you mean by normalization? Well, normalization is a process that is used to minimize dependency and redundancy by organizing the fields of our table in our database. One of the primary purposes of normalization is to delete, add, and modify the fields that can be made in a single table and can be independent. Number 7. Explain types of normalization. Well, we can divide the normalization into 4 types, and they are as follow. First normalization form, it is also known as 1NF. Then we have second normalization form. Then we have third normal form or normalization form. Then we have fourth normal form. Let's talk about each one of them in detail. First normal form. Well, this form removes all the duplicate columns from our database table. The creation of the table for relating data and identification of the unique column also takes place here. Second normal form. Well, after meeting all the requirements of the first normal form, we place the subsets of the data in separate tables and create the relationships among the tables with the help of primary keys. Then comes third normal form. Just like second normal form, where it should meet all the first normal form, this should meet all the requirements of the second normal form and remove the columns that are not dependent on the primary key constraints. Fourth normal form. Well, it should meet all the requirements of the third normal form and should not have multi-valued dependencies. Number 8. What do you mean by denormalization? Well, this process is the contrast to normalization. Redundant data gets added to speed up the complex queries with multiple tables that need to be joined. Number 9. What are the subsets of SQL? Please name them. Well, we can divide the SQL queries into 4 categories. First one is Data Definition Language or DDL. Well, DDL queries are composed of SQL commands which are used to define the structure of the database and modify it. These are drop, create, drop columns, alter, add columns, and truncate. Then we have Data Manipulation Language, which is also known as DML. Well, as the name suggests, it is used to manipulate the data. And we have Insert, Update, Delete, Select Info. These are all the things that are related to Data Manipulation Language. Then we have Data Control Language, and these type of queries are used to manage the database access, write, and permission control. In that term, we have grant, revoke. Then comes Transaction Control Language. Well, TCL type of commands are used to manage the transactions in databases and changes made by the DML statement. We have commit, rollback, set transaction, save point. Number 10. What do you mean by SQL operators? Well, we use SQL operators to perform specific operations in our database. We use these operators in our SQL queries and we can use them within the where clause of the SQL command. The SQL operators can be categorized into following types. First one is arithmetic operators. In that we have addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, remainder or modulus. Then comes our logical operators. Well, we have all, any, and, is null, between, in, not operators available, or and unique are also part of it. Then comes comparison operators. Well, these are equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, etc. Then comes compound operators. Well, it has add equals, subtract equals, multiply equals, divide equals, etc. Then comes string operators. In that we have string concatenation, wildcard, and then we have string concatenation assignment. Number 11. Name some of the applications of SQL. Well, some of the significant SQL applications include the setting and running of the analytical queries, writing scripts for data integration, adding, deleting, and updating the columns and rows of the data in database, retrieving the sets and subsets of information from the database for the analytical operation, or for analytical applications. Number 12. Name some of the difference between SQL and MySQL. First of all, let's talk about SQL. Well, it is a structured query language. It remains the same. The server is independent in it. It gets used for the query and operating of database system. It offers support for the only single storage engine. Then comes, and let's talk about MySQL. Well, it is DBMS. It keeps on updating, and during the backups, the server blocks the database. It allows us the data sorting, handling, and modification in an organized manner. It supports multiple storage engines. Number 13. What do you mean by unique key? A unique key is such a key that can uniquely identify each record in our database. We achieve the quality of uniqueness for our column or set of multiple columns. There can be many unique keys in our table, but we can only use one unique key as our primary key. For example, we have many data fields in our table like name, date of birth, father name, ID, etc. But there can be same name, date of birth, and father name for more than one person in one table. But there is no way that two employees can have same ID. So here, ID will be our unique key and can be used as the primary key. Let's say we also have passport number in a table. So ID and passport numbers are unique keys and they cannot be the same for more than one person, but only one of them can be used as primary key. Number 14. What do you mean by primary and foreign key? A primary key is a key that is combination of such fields that are uniquely specific to a row. A primary key has not null constraints, meaning that primary keys cannot have null values. We use primary keys for the communication between the tables. Let's say we have tables A and B. To communicate with table B, a table will use the primary key of table B and vice versa. A foreign key is a key that can be used in another table. Basically, it is the primary key of a table. For example, if we again take the example of table A and B, the primary key will act as a foreign key when it is used by table B and vice versa. Number 15. What do you mean by trigger? A trigger in the database is a program or a code that executes automatically with the response to some events on our table or view in the database. Other than that, the trigger primarily helps maintain our database integrity. For example, when a new employee gets added to the employee database, a new record should be created as well, like ID, pay, bonuses, designation, tables, etc. Number 16. What do you mean by join, and explain its type? Join is a keyword that we use to query the data from our tables based on the relationships between the field of our tables. Join gets used to getting the data from more than one field, and there are 4 types of join: full join, inner join, right join, left join. Let's talk about each one of them in detail. Full join. Well, full join is used when we want to extract the data from the table when there are matching rows in any of them. It means full join will return the complete data from the left hand side and from the right hand side as well. Inner join. Inner join gets used to return or extract the data when there is at least one match of rows in tables. Right join. Right join is used to return or extract the right hand side rows from the tables. In simple words, it returns all the rows from the tables even if there are no matches on the left side of the table. Left join. Well, this returns the right side rows among the table and all the rows on the left side of the table. In simple word, it returns all the rows from the left side of the table even if there are no matches on the right side of our table. Number 17. What is the stored procedure? A stored procedure is a function that consists of many SQL statements that get used to accessing the database system. Many SQL statements are consolidated into a stored procedure and can be executed whenever required. Number 18. What is recursive stored procedure? Well, this procedure is a procedure that refers to a stored procedure that calls itself until and unless it gets to reach the boundary condition. This function procedure helps the programmers to use the same code again and again in n number of times. Number 19. How many levels of constraints are there? Well, constraints represent a column that enforces the data consistency and entity. We have two levels of constraint in SQL and database, and they are as follows: column level constraint, table level constraints. Number 20. What are the advantages and disadvantages of the stored procedure? Well, we can use the stored procedure as modular programming. This means we can create them once and can be stored and called several times whenever they are needed and required. This supports the faster execution instead of the execution of multiple queries. This helps in the reduction of network traffic and provides better security for the data. If we talk about the disadvantage, it can be executed only in the database and utilizes more memory in the database server. Number 21. What do you mean by query and subquery? Well, a database query is an instruction or code that is written to extract or get the information or data from our database. We can design the query in such a way that it can match our expected result. A subquery is a part of the query. In simple words, the subquery is a query present in another query. The outer or parent query is called the main query, and the inner query or child query is called a subquery. While execution, subquery always gets executed first, and the result of the subquery gets passed to the main query. And then the main query executes based on the results achieved from the subquery. Number 22. What do you mean by clause in SQL? SQL clause can be defined to limit the result sets by providing the condition to our query. This helps us filter some rows from our hold record. For example, queries having where condition. Number 23. Differentiate the delete and truncate commands. Well, delete command gets used for removing rows from a table, and we can use the where clause for the conditional set of parameters in our query. We can perform the rollback and commit after using the delete statement. On the other hand, truncate removes all the rows from our tables, and we cannot roll back the truncate operation. Number 24. What do you mean by online transaction processing or OLTP? Well, online transaction processing gets used to manage the transaction-based applications that can be used for data entry, data processing, and data retrieval. Online transaction processing also makes data management efficient and straightforward. And OLTP also serves real-time transactions, for example, bank transactions. Number 25. What's the difference between OLAP or OLAP and OLTP? Well, OLTP is a database query system and it is an online system. OLAP is not a database modification system, whereas OLTP stands for online transactional processing that allows us to execute a massive amount of database transactions in real time for a vast group of people, and it does all that in real time. Number 26. Explain different types of subqueries. Well, we have two types of subqueries, correlated and non-correlated. In correlated queries, we cannot consider them independent, but we can refer to the column in a table that is listed in the from query in the list of main queries. In a non-correlated query, the subquery can be considered as an independent query, and not only that, the subquery's output gets substituted in the main query. Number 27. What do you mean by constraint? Well, a constraint can be used and understood as the limit we apply to the data types onto our table. we can specify the constraints while creating or altering the table statements. Some of the constraints are check, default, not null, unique, primary key, foreign key. Number 28. What do you mean by unique constraints? Unique constraints make sure that all the values in columns are not the same. For example, if we assign a unique constraint to the employee name column in a table, then every entry in the column should have a unique value. Number 29. What do you mean by union, minus, and intersect commands? Well, union operator gets used to combining the results of two different tables, and it also eliminates the duplicate rows from our table. Minus operator gets used to return the rows from the first query but not from the second query. As a result, matching records of the first, second, and other rows from the first query get displayed as a result. Intersect command returns the rows that are returned by both queries. Number 30. What do you mean by a view? By view, we mean a virtual table consisting of a subset of data contained in a table. It is not present virtually and takes less space to store. We can have data of more than one table combined in view depending on the relationships. Number 31. What are the types of views you know about? Well, we can classify views into 4 categories in SQL: simple view, complex view, inline view, and the last one is materialized view. A simple view is a view based on a single table and does not have a group by clause or some other features. In a complex view, it is built on several tables and includes the group by clause and some other functions. Inline view, it is built on subqueries in from clause, and that provides a temporary table, and then it simplifies the complicated queries. A materialized view is the one that saves both the details and definitions. It also builds replicas of data by preserving them physically. Number 32. Explain the types of indexing. Well, we have 3 types of indexing: unique indexing, clustered indexing, non-clustered indexing. Let's talk about unique indexing first. Well, this type of indexing does not allow the fields to have duplicate values if we have column indexed uniquely. When the primary key is defined, unique indexing can be applied automatically. Clustered indexing. Well, this indexing reorders the order of table and bases the search on the key value, and each table can have one clustered index. Non-clustered indexing. Well, it does not alter the physical order of the table like the clustered indexing. It maintains the logical order of the data, and each table can have up to 999 non-clustered indexes. Number 33. What do you mean by cursor and how to use it? Well, in the databases, a cursor allows us to navigate around the table's documents and rows. We can refer to it as a pointer for one row in a set of rows. Cursors are considered extremely useful for database traversal operations such as insertion, elimination, and extraction. To use it, after the declaration of the variable, you declare a cursor. After that, a select statement should always be aligned with the declaration of the cursor. For the initialization of the result set, the open statement should be called before fetching the rows from the result table. To switch and grab the next row in the result set, use the fetch statement. And finally, use the deallocate clause for the uninstallation of the cursor description. Then clean all the resources that are associated with it. Here we have an example, and here if you see, first of all we have declared, then we'll have name, and then we have data type as varchar, then we have its size as 50. Then we are declaring our cursor. Then we have our select clause, we have name from the database which is mydb.org, and then we are declaring that where employee name, and then we are searching for a particular employee name, and after that we are fetching the data. And if you see, we are closing our cursor, and at the end we are deallocating our cursor as well. So this is how it looks like, and this is how it works. Number 34. What do you mean by aggregate and scalar function? Well, aggregate functions are used for the evaluation of mathematical calculation, and it returns single values. We can calculate this from the columns or tables. On the other hand, the scalar function returns a single value based on the input value. Here, if you see, here we have aggregate, max, count. It will calculate for the numeric. Then we have scalar, ucase, now, and it will calculate for string. Number 35. What do you mean by user-defined functions, and what are their types? Well, user-defined functions are those functions that are written to implement the user logic and business requirements. It is not necessary to write the same logic several times, and we can call those functions whenever they are required in the program. We have three different types of user-defined functions, and they are as scalar functions, inline table valued function, multi-statement valued functions. Number 36. What do you mean by data integrity? Well, data integrity defines the consistency and accuracy of the data stored in the database. It can also define the integrity constraints to enforce the business rules on our data when it is entered into the application or the database. Number 37. Explain transactions and their controls. Well, the transaction is also defined as a sequence task performed on our database logically to extract and gain some results. Different operations get performed over transactions like creating, updating, deleting records, etc. In simple words, we can say that transaction is a group of SQL queries that we execute on our database. Number 38. What do you mean by collation, and what are the types of collation sensitivity? Collation is the rule that determines how the character data can be stored and compared. We can use the ASCII values to compare these character data. There are different types of collation sensitivity. Case sensitivity, for example, capital A and small a, and capital B and small b. Accent sensitivity, kana sensitivity, basically it's a Japanese kana characters. Then we have width sensitivity, single byte characters and double byte characters. Number 39. How to fetch or extract the common records from two tables? Well, we can fetch the common records from tables in many ways. For example, we can do that with the help of INTERSECT. So here we have an example like select student from student, and then we are using our keyword as INTERSECT. And then here we are calling select student from exam. So here if you see, we have used two different tables as exam and student, and we are extracting information from two different tables using the INTERSECT command. Number 40. How do you fetch or extract the alternate records from a table? Well, we can fetch both even and odd row numbers data. For that, we just need to write a simple query. Here, for the even number, if you see, we are calling select student ID from, and then we have select row number, student ID from student, and here we have our clause as where mod row number 2 equals 0. And now it will get us all those data that are on even number. In terms of odd numbers, we'll have the same query. We do not need to change anything, but we only need to change our modulus, as this time our modulus will be equal to 1, and it will extract all the odd data from our tables. So this is how you can extract alternate data. Number 41. What is the use of INTERSECT operator? INTERSECT operator helps us to combine statements and returns those records that are common in both select statement that we have selected. After getting tables A and B, if we apply the INTERSECT operator on these two tables, we are going to get only those records that are common as the result of the select statement of those two tables. Number 42. Explain the difference between in and between operator in SQL. The in is a conditional operator and it is used for those values within a given range of values. In case we have more than one value to choose from, in that case we use the in operator. Between operator gets used for the representation of rows based on a set of values. The values can be text, dates or numbers. Between operator gets used to search the value that exists in two specified range. Number 43. Explain the difference between CHAR and VARCHAR2 data types. Well, both of these data types gets used as character data types, but the VARCHAR2 gets used for the character string variable length. CHAR can store only 10 characters, as if you see we have given the size as 10, and it will not be able to store a string of any other length until and unless we change the size of our char. But on the other hand, VARCHAR2 can store any length. Number 44. Write a command to fetch the first 5 characters of a string. Well, there are many ways that we can use and follow to fetch the 5 characters or any number of characters from a string. Here we have an example as select substring, and then we have student name, then we have two numbers as 1 and 5, and then it says as student name from student. So basically we are giving it a range as 1, 5 means extract the characters from 1 to 5. So this is how you can extract characters from a string. You just need to give the range and you are good to go. Number 45. What are local and global variables and explain the difference between them. Local variables are such variables that exist and can be used inside the function. They are unknown to other functions and these variables cannot be used or referred to. Such variables can be created whenever that particular function is called. On the other hand, we have a contrast with global variables. Global variables are such variables that exist and can be used throughout a program, and global variables cannot be created during execution or when the function is called. Number 46. What do you mean by auto-increment? Well, auto-increment allows us to create a unique number that we can generate when a new record gets added or inserted into the table. Auto-increment can be used in Oracle and identity keyword can be used in SQL Server. Number 47. What do you mean by relations in SQL or database? Relations or relationship in a database can be defined as the connection that is in between the tables in our database. We have various types of relations and they are as follows: one-to-one relationships, one-to-many relationships, many-to-one relationship, self-referencing relationship. Number 48. What do you understand about the ACID property in a database? ACID stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. The CID properties gets used for checking the reliability of the transaction. Atomicity refers to failed or completed transaction, whereas the transaction referred to as single operation on data. Consistency means that our data meets all the validity guidelines. Concurrency management is one of the primary objects of isolation. The durability makes sure that once a transaction gets committed, it will occur regardless of whatever happens. Number 49. How to handle exceptions in SQL Server. Well, like many other programming languages, we can use try and catch blocks to handle exceptions in the SQL servers. Add the SQL statement in try block and write your code in the catch block to handle the exceptions. If there is an error in the code in the try block, the control will automatically shift to the catch block. Number 50. How can we create an empty table having the same structure as another table? Well, to do this, use the into operator to fetch the records of one table in a new one and set the where clause to make it false for all the entries. Now, it will be possible to create the needed empty table with the same structure, and as a result, SQL will create a new table having a duplicate structure that will accept the fetched entities. Nothing will get stored in the new table as we have the where clause in the active state. So these were 50 questions that you can consider for your next interview related to SQL. I hope now that you must have loved and learned something new by watching this video. If that is the case, please leave a like, subscribe and press the bell icon. We'll get back to you in the next video. Till then, take care.